Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The antiseptic smell hit Colt Warner as he strode through the automatic doors of Red Grove Regional's emergency department. His navy blue scrubs felt strange against his skin for once. He was on the wrong side of the medical crisis. Behind him, Jessa clutched 7-year-old Nellie's hand, her mascara smeared beneath puffy eyes. "My son," Colt said to the intake nurse, voice steady despite the hurricane in his chest. Braden Warner, 12 years old, just admitted. Room 204's door stood ajar. Inside, Braden lay motionless on a hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to machines Colt knew too intimately. A young doctor bent over him, checking his pupils with a penlight. "Dr. Quezada?" Colt asked, though he already knew. The doctor straightened. "Mr. Warner? I'm Dr. Malcolm Quezada. I work here. Trauma department." Colt moved to Braden's side, professional assessment momentarily overriding parental anguish. Oxygen levels stable but low. Heart rate elevated. Pupils reactive but sluggish. A nasty laceration on his forehead had been freshly stitched. "Dad," Nellie tugged at his scrubs, her voice barely audible. "Can I talk to you?" Jessa moved quickly, placing herself between Colt and their daughter. "Not now, honey. The doctors need to help Braden." Colt caught Nellie's eye. Something there fear? A warning? Before he could process it, Jessa was at the doctor's side, her hands moving animatedly. "It happened so fast," she was saying. "I was in the kitchen. He must have tripped coming down the stairs. I heard the thump and found him at the bottom." Her words tumbled out, too rehearsed, too detailed. As Dr. Quezada walked Jessa through the preliminary diagnosis: severe concussion, possible intracranial pressure, induced coma to reduce brain swelling. Colt found himself watching his wife instead of listening. 12 years of marriage, and suddenly she seemed like a stranger that a small hand slipped into his. Nellie had maneuvered around her mother. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging him down to her level. "Brother says to look at her back." Colt's spine stiffened. "What did you say, sweetheart?" "Brother says to look at her back." Nellie's eyes darted to Braden, then back to Colt. "He told me before." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Colt glanced at Jessa, still engrossed with the doctor, then back to Braden's still form. With careful movements that wouldn't draw attention, he slipped around to the other side of the bed. With one eye on Jessa, he gently lifted the back of Braden's hospital gown. His breath caught. Along Braden's spine ran a pattern of bruises, distinct finger marks that could never have come from a fall downstairs. And there, just above his tailbone, was a small, crescent-shaped burn, the skin puckered and angry. Colt lowered the gown, his mind racing even as his face remained impassive. Training from the Navy and years in trauma kicked in: observe, assess, control your reactions, plan your response. "Mr. Warner." Dr. Quezada was watching him with a slight frown. "Is everything all right?" "Just checking for other injuries," Colt said smoothly. "Force of habit." Jessa's eyes narrowed slightly. "The doctors already did that, honey." The endearment felt like acid. Colt nodded and stepped back, but his mind was already piecing together a puzzle whose picture he didn't want to see. 3 hours later, Colt stood in the hospital corridor, coffee cooling in his hand as Dr. Quezada approached with a tablet. Jessa had taken Nellie to the cafeteria, giving Colt his first moment alone with the doctor. "Mr. Warner," Quezada said quietly, "I'd like to discuss some inconsistencies in Braden's injury pattern." Colt's jaw tightened. "Go on." The doctor swiped through several images on his tablet. "The skull fracture is consistent with impact, but the angle suggests he was struck, not that he fell." He hesitated, then added, "And these bruises on his back?" "Hand marks," Colt said flatly. "Yes, and this burn." Quezada pointed to the crescent shape. "It appears to be from a ring or similar object, pressed with considerable force. None of these injuries match with a stair fall." "Are you making a child abuse report?" "I'm required to by law," Quezada confirmed. "But I wanted to speak with you first because—" The click of heels on linoleum cut him off. Jessa approached, Nellie trailing behind with a juice box. Colt didn't miss how Quezada immediately switched screens on his tablet, or how Jessa's eyes darted between them. assessing. Everything okay? Jessa asked, voice honeyed with concern. Just reviewing Braden's scans, Quezada said, but his eyes didn't quite meet hers. Jessa stepped closer to the doctor, her hand brushing his arm in a gesture that seemed both casual and calculated. And? Is my baby going to be okay? We're doing everything we can, Mrs. Warner, Quezada said, stepping back slightly. If I could have a few more minutes with your husband to discuss treatment options. Whatever you need to tell him, you can tell me, Jessa interrupted, her smile not reaching her eyes. We don't keep secrets. The lie hung in the air between them. Night fell over Red Grove Regional. The pediatric ICU quieted as the shift changed. Colt sat in the recliner beside Braden's bed, watching his son's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. Across the room, Jessa curled in another chair, scrolling through her phone, her brow furrowed. You should take Nellie home, Colt said. Get some rest. Jessa looked up, surprise flitting across her features. You're not coming? I'll stay with him tonight. The nurses can watch him, Colt. You need sleep too. I'm staying. Something like calculation passed behind Jess's eyes before she nodded. All right, I'll bring you a change of clothes in the morning. She stood, gathering her purse. Come on, Nellie. Let's go home. Nellie, who had been silently coloring in the corner, looked up with apprehension. Can't I stay with Daddy? No, sweetie. You need proper sleep. Say good night to your brother and father. Nellie approached Braden's bed, standing on tiptoes to kiss his cheek. Night, Bray, she whispered. Then she turned to Colt, wrapping thin arms around his neck. Be careful, Daddy, she breathed against his ear, so quiet he almost missed it. Before he could respond, Jessa was there, hand firmly on Nellie's shoulder. Come on now. Daddy needs quiet. Colt watched them go, Nellie's warning echoing in his mind. As they reached the door, he called out, Jessa. She turned, eyebrows raised. How did you say Braden fell again? Was he running? A barely perceptible pause. No, just tripped, I think. What? Just trying to picture it. Good night. After they left, Colt sat in silence, processing. The burn on Braden's back. Nellie's warning. Jessa's carefully constructed story. The way she'd hovered around Quezada, preventing any private conversation. His nurse's training kicked in observe, document, report. He pulled out his phone and began making notes, recording times, statements, behaviors. Then he did something he'd never done before. He scrolled through his recent photos of Braden, looking for any signs he might have missed. Nothing obvious, but in the more recent pictures, Braden's smile seemed forced, his eyes carrying a wariness that hadn't been there before. The night nurse, May, poked her head in. Need anything, Colt? Kind of weird seeing you on this side of things. I'm fine. Hey, May, did Dr. Quezada leave orders for a full-body examination? She checked her tablet. Just the standard neuro checks. What? Could you add documentation of all visible injuries? Photos included. For the medical record. May gave him a long look. Already in progress. Quezada ordered it after you left for coffee earlier. She lowered her voice. The social worker's been notified. The hospital night stretched endlessly. As monitors beeped and nurses came and went, Colt's mind drifted to happier times, searching for signs he might have missed 3 summers ago. Lake Oswego, rental cabin. Braden, 9 then, had caught his first largemouth bass. The pride in the boy's eyes as he held up the fish, Jessa clapping, Nellie squealing in disgust at the wiggling creature. A perfect day, or had it been? Now, with suspicion coloring his memories, Colt recalled how Jessa had been on her phone much of that trip. How she'd taken long walks alone, claiming to need exercise. How she'd returned once with flushed cheeks and claimed it was from the heat, though the day had been mild. Last Thanksgiving, Braden's school play. He'd been a pilgrim with exactly 2 lines, which he'd practiced for weeks. Jessa had been late, sliding into her seat just as the curtain rose, smelling faintly of unfamiliar cologne. Colt had assumed it was from the crowded lobby. Now he wondered. The baseball tournament in Eugene 3 months ago, Colt had taken the kids alone because Jessa had food poisoning. She'd been fine when they returned Sunday night. Monday morning, Colt had found a receipt for gas in Portland in her jacket pocket, a 2-hour drive from Red Grove, in the opposite direction from Eugene. The memories shifted, darkened. Braden growing quieter over recent months, flinching when doors slammed, making excuses not to be home alone with Jessa. Nellie becoming her brother's shadow, the two whispering when they thought no one was listening. And most damning, 2 weeks ago, finding Braden in the garage at midnight, sleeping bag in the unheated space, claiming he'd wanted to camp out. Colt's hands clenched into fists. He should have seen it, should have asked more questions, should have protected his son. The sky outside Braden's window began to lighten with pre-dawn gray. Colt's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Need to talk. Hospital cafeteria. 6 a.m. Come alone. E.W. Eliza. His sister always had impeccable timing. The hospital cafeteria hummed with early morning activity. Colt spotted Eliza, immediately tall, angular, her gray-streaked black hair pulled into a severe bun that matched her expression. 12 years his senior, she had always been more parent than sibling after their mother died and their father checked out emotionally. "You look like hell," she said by way of greeting, pushing a coffee toward him. "Good to see you too." He sank into the chair opposite her, body aching from the night in the recliner. "How's Braden?" "Stable. They're keeping him in the coma to reduce brain swelling." Eliza nodded, then leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Jessa called me, spinning some bullshit about a fall. I drove straight here from Portland." Colt tensed. "You never liked her." And I was right. She pulled out her phone, sliding it across the table. "Look." On the screen was a police report from 8 years ago before Colt had met Jessa. Domestic disturbance call to an apartment in Bend, Oregon. Jessa Morgan, her maiden name, listed as the victim. Suspect, Ren Laramie. Keep scrolling, Eliza instructed. Colt did. 3 more reports, spanning 2 years. Each time, Jessa declined to press charges. The final report noted neighbor claims of hearing a child crying during the altercations. A child? Colt looked up sharply. No record of Jessa having a child, Eliza said. But people don't make that up. And there's more. She took the phone back, opening another document. Jessa's been lying to you for a long time. That job she claimed to have before you met? Never existed. That college degree? Never finished. That estranged family in California? They're in Arizona, and they tried to contact her multiple times through a lawyer. The world seemed to tilt beneath Colt. How do you know all this? I never stopped looking into her. Call it overprotective, call it paranoid, but something about her story never added up. Eliza's face softened slightly. I've been waiting for the right time to tell you. I guess this is it. She told me she was an only child. Private adoption. Parents deceased. All eyes. She has 2 living parents and a brother in Phoenix. Estranged, yes, but not dead. Eliza hesitated. There's more. Rumors, mainly. In Bend, before she met you. Control issues. Manipulation. A boyfriend who vanished after filing a restraining order against her. Colt's mind raced, trying to reconcile the woman he'd married with this portrait Eliza painted. Why would she? I don't know. But whatever's going on, Braden's injuries weren't from a fall. And I'd bet my life Jessa knows exactly what happened. Colt arranged for Nellie to visit the hospital playroom while Jessa spoke with Dr. Quezada about overnight developments. It took careful maneuvering a suggestion from a sympathetic nurse that Nellie might benefit from the child life specialist, a hint that Jessa's input on medical decisions was urgently needed. The playroom was empty except for Nellie, sitting at a small table with colored markers, drawing what appeared to be their family. Colt settled beside her, his large frame comical in the tiny chair. That's nice, sweetheart. Is that all of us? Nellie nodded without looking up. In her drawing, stick figure Braden stood between Colt and Nellie, while Jessa stood apart. Nellie, Colt said gently, can we talk about what you said yesterday? About looking at Braden's back? The marker stilled in her hand. She glanced at the door. It's okay, Colt assured her. Mom's talking to the doctor. It's just us. Nellie set down the marker and looked up at him with eyes too old for her 7 years. Is Braden going to die? The question knocked the wind from him. No, honey. He's very hurt, but the doctors are helping him. He told me to tell you if he got hurt. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He made me promise. Colt's heart hammered. Tell me what exactly? About Mommy's friend, the man with the ring. Nellie traced a crescent shape on her own hand. He comes when you're at work. He doesn't like Braden. The room seemed to tilt. This man, he has a name? Nellie shook her head. Mommy calls him Ren Laramie. The name from the police reports blazed in Colt's mind. What happened, Nellie? The day Braden got hurt. Her lower lip trembled. I was in my room. Braden was supposed to be at baseball, but he came home early. I heard yelling. Mommy's friend was mad at Braden. He called him names. Tears welled in her eyes. Braden yelled back. He said he was going to tell you. Then I heard a noise, like something breaking. Then it was quiet. What did Mommy do? She told me to stay in my room. She said Braden fell down the stairs. Nellie's voice dropped even lower. But there wasn't any falling. Just yelling, then a big noise. Colt fought to keep his expression neutral despite the rage building inside him. Did you see this man? A small nod. He's been here before. Lots of times when you work nights. What does he look like? Tall. Hair like fire. She pointed to a red marker. A big ring here. She touched her right hand. He smells like the stuff you and Uncle Jim drink at barbecues. Colt committed every detail to memory. Nellie, this is very important. Did you ever see this man hurt Braden? Were you? She shook her head. He grabbed Braden's arm sometimes. Call him Brad. But yesterday was different. He was really, really mad. And where was Mommy when this happened? There. Watching. Nellie's eyes filled again. She didn't stop him, Daddy. She just watched. The revelation hit Colt like a physical blow. Not just an affair, but Jessa had stood by while someone hurt their son. His son, that he gathered Nellie into his arms, his mind racing through options, scenarios, consequences. You did the right thing telling me, brave girl. Now I need you to do something else very brave. What? Act normal around Mommy. Don't tell her we talked about this. Can you do that? Nellie nodded against his chest. Are you going to make the bad man go away? Yes, Colt promised, steel in his voice. I'm going to make sure he never comes near you or Braden again. Family emergency leave, Colt said into his phone, pacing the hospital corridor outside Braden's room. Yes, I understand the department is short-staffed. My son is in a coma, Karen. He pinched the bridge of his nose. 2 weeks minimum. Thank you. He ended the call and leaned against the wall, closing his eyes briefly. 48 hours since Braden's fall, and the boy remained stable but unconscious. Colt had barely slept, catching minutes here and there in the recliner beside the bed. Jessa had made noises about taking shifts, but Colt had insisted she be home with Nellie, maintaining normal routines. Normal. The word tasted bitter now. He pulled out his personal phone, not the one Jessa knew the password to, but a backup he kept for work emergencies. Eliza had texted an address in downtown Redgrove, a private investigator she trusted. The hospital room door opened, and Jessa emerged, designer purse slung over her shoulder. Nellie's soccer practice is in an hour, she said. I can come back after I drop her off. No need, Colt replied, his voice casual despite the disgust roiling inside him. I've taken leave from work. I'll stay with Braden. You focus on Nellie. Something flickered in Jess's eyes relief. You sure? You need a rest too. I'm fine. Go. Hours later, while a trusted nurse watched Braden, Colt sat in a Spartan office across from Devin Morgan, a compact man with shrewd eyes and the demeanor of a retired cop, which, as Colt quickly learned, he was. Let me be clear, Morgan said after Colt explained the situation. You're alleging your wife has been having an affair with this Laramie character, and that he physically assaulted your son, possibly with your wife's knowledge or consent. Yes. Colt's voice was steady. And I need evidence that will stand up in court, both criminal and family court. Morgan nodded slowly. Phone records I can get legally with your name on the account. Same for bank statements. Emails are trickier unless you have her password. I used to. She changed it recently. Of course she did. Morgan made a note. What about your home? Any computers, tablets? Desktop in the study. Laptop she keeps in her bag. Both password protected. Does she use any cloud storage you know of? Apple, Google, Dropbox? Colt thought for a moment. Google, I think. For photos. Morgan quoted a figure that would eat a significant chunk of their savings. Colt didn't flinch. One more thing, Morgan said, studying Colt's face. What's your endgame here? Because if it involves anything illegal, I can't be part of that. Justice, Colt replied simply. Legal justice. I want custody of my children. I want Laramie prosecuted for assaulting my son. And I want my wife to face whatever consequences the law provides for her role. Early morning light filtered through the blinds of Braden's hospital room as Colt reviewed the information Devin Morgan had sent overnight. The private investigator worked fast, perhaps sensing the urgency of the situation, or perhaps motivated by the substantial retainer on his tablet. Carefully angled away from the door, Colt scrolled through a comprehensive background check on Ren Laramie. Born in Lubbock, Texas. 3 arrests for assault. Charges dropped each time. A restraining order filed by a former girlfriend who later disappeared case still open in El Paso. Moved to Oregon 6 years ago. Current residence. An apartment in downtown Red Grove, less than 3 miles from the Warner home. Most damning was Laramie's connection to Jessa. They hadn't just dated before Colt, they'd been engaged. A newspaper announcement from Bend, dated 9 years ago, included a photo. Jessa, younger but unmistakable, beaming up at a tall man with copper-red hair and a goatee. The engagement had been broken off abruptly, no explanation in the small-town paper. What had Jessa told Colt when they met? That her last serious relationship had been in college. That she'd moved to Red Grove for a fresh start after a bad breakup. Lies, all of it. Morgan had also pulled phone records for the past 6 months. Hundreds of calls between Jessa and a number registered to Laramie, mostly during Colt's night shifts or when he was on overtime. The pattern was clear, methodical, as was the increasing frequency in recent weeks that a soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Eliza entered, carrying coffee and a paper bag. Breakfast, she said simply, setting them on a rolling tray. Any change? They're reducing the sedation today. Should know more by afternoon. Colt turned the tablet toward her. Morgan came through. Eliza scanned the document, her expression darkening. Jesus. Assault, disappearance, restraining orders. She brought this man around your children. Apparently, they never actually broke up. Colt's voice was flat, emotionless. Just took a break while she found someone stable to marry. Someone with good insurance, a reliable job, and no criminal record. A mark, Eliza translated. Me. Eliza's face softened with rare vulnerability. Colt, you couldn't have known. I should have. The signs were there. He swiped to another document, bank records, showing larger and larger withdrawals over the past 3 months. She's been siphoning money too. Nearly $50,000 so far. For what? My guess. An exit strategy. Colt closed the tablet case. Morgan thinks they were planning to leave together. Take the money, maybe the kids, start over somewhere else. Then why hurt Braden? He knew too much. Saw too much. Colt's knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. And Laramie has a history of violence. Braden probably confronted him, threatened to tell me. That afternoon, with Braden's sedation reduced and his condition stable, Colt finally went home. The colonial-style house in Red Grove's most desirable neighborhood looked exactly as it always had: pristine landscaping, American flag by the door, welcome mat reading The Warners, is 2013. A lie even on the doorstep. Inside, the house felt both familiar and foreign. Evidence of their life together surrounded him, family photos on the walls, Nellie's artwork on the refrigerator, Braden's baseball trophies on the mantel. Had it all been a facade? Had Jessa ever truly been part of this family? Or had she been playing a role all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal her true self? In Braden's room, Colt felt a wave of emotion hit him. Baseball pennants on the walls. Science fair ribbons pinned to a corkboard. A half-finished model rocket on the desk. The normal trappings of a 12-year-old boy's life. But Braden wasn't a normal 12-year-old. He was observant, detail-oriented, and most importantly, he'd known something was wrong. Colt began a careful search, starting with the obvious hiding spots under the mattress, in the closet behind the dresser. Nothing. He checked the backs of drawers, inside the air vent, beneath loose floorboards his son might have discovered. Still nothing. Frustration building, Colt sat on Braden's bed and tried to think like his son. What had Nellie said? Mommy's friend. The man with the ring. He comes when you're at work. And Braden had warned his sister. That meant he'd had proof, or at least strongly suspected what was happening. That Colt's gaze traveled around the room again, settling on the Lego sets arranged on a bookshelf. Braden had dozens, from simple kits to complex engineering marvels he'd spent weeks perfecting. One in particular caught Colt's eye: a Millennium Falcon, Braden's favorite, positioned prominently in the center of the shelf. Beside it sat a smaller set, a jewelry box, complete with tiny drawers that really opened. A gift from Eliza last Christmas. An unusual choice for a boy, but Braden had been fascinated by the mechanical aspects of the drawers. Colt moved to the shelf and carefully lifted the Lego jewelry box. It was heavier than it should have been. With gentle fingers, he pulled open the top drawer. Empty. The second drawer. Also empty. The third drawer stuck slightly. Colt wiggled it, and it came free in his hand, revealing a small compartment behind it that should not have been part of the original design. Inside was a tiny device about the size of a thumb drive, a miniature camera with a micro SD card. Colt's pulse quickened. With shaking hands, he took the device to Braden's desk and connected it to the computer. The files loaded, dozens of short video clips, dated over the past 3 months. Colt clicked on the most recent, dated the day of Braden's fall. The video showed Braden's room from an angle that suggested the camera had been hidden on a shelf. The door opened, and Braden entered, followed by a tall man with copper-red hair, Ren Laramie. Even without the background check photo, Colt would have recognized him from Nellie's description. Tall, red-haired, with a large ring on his right hand. The audio was faint but clear enough. "You need to stop snooping, kid," Laramie said, closing the door behind him. "Your mom and I have plans that don't involve you." Braden stood his ground, though Colt could see the fear in his son's posture. "I know what you're doing. I heard you talking about taking money. About leaving. So what if we are? Not like your dad pays much attention anyway. Always at the hospital, saving strangers instead of noticing what's happening in his own house." The words cut deep, but Colt forced himself to keep watching. "I'm telling him," Braden said, his voice stronger. "Tonight. And I'm showing him the videos." Laramie's expression darkened. "What videos?" "The ones showing you and Mom. I've been recording. I have proof." Laramie moved faster than Colt expected, grabbing Braden by the collar. "Where are they?" "Let go." Braden struggled, breaking free. "Get out of my room. You little shit. You think you can threaten me?" Laramie advanced on Braden, who backed toward the window. "Your mommy doesn't want Daddy to know our little secret. And neither do I. Get out." Braden shouted, louder now. The door opened, and Jessa appeared. "What's going on?" "The neighbors will hear." "Your son's been playing detective," Laramie said, not taking his eyes off Braden. "Says he has videos. Says he's telling Daddy tonight." Jessa's face went pale. "Braden, what are you talking about?" "I know everything, Mom," Braden said, his voice cracking. "The money you took. The plans to leave. How you lied to Dad for years." "You don't understand," Jessa began, but Laramie cut her off. "We don't have time for this. Where are the videos, kid?" "I'm not telling you anything," Braden said, defiant despite the tremor in his voice. "Dad deserves to know the truth." What happened next made Colt's blood freeze. Laramie lunged forward, grabbing Braden by the arm. The boy twisted away, trying to reach the door. Jessa didn't move to help her son instead. She blocked the doorway, preventing his escape. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she said, her voice chillingly calm. "Mom, please," Braden pleaded. "He's hurting me." Laramie spun Braden around, gripping him by both arms now. "Last chance, kid. Where are the videos?" "I'll never tell you," Braden shouted, kicking out. His foot connected with Laramie's shin. The man cursed, his face twisting with rage. The large ring on his right hand caught the light as he raised his arm. "Ren, don't," Jessa began, but too late. Laramie struck Braden across the face. The boy stumbled backward, tripping over a chair and crashing into the corner of the desk before falling to the floor. A sickening thud, then stillness. With shaking hands, Colt copied the video files to a secure cloud drive, then to a flash drive he tucked into his pocket. He returned the camera to its hiding place. Evidence would need to be collected properly to maintain the chain of custody. Then he pulled out his phone and made 2 calls, first to Devin Morgan, then to Detective Tara Lunsford of the Red Grove Police Department. "I have proof," he told the detective. Video evidence of the assault on my son and my wife's involvement. Colt sat in the living room, waiting. The flash drive felt heavy in his pocket. On the coffee table sat 2 glasses of the bourbon he rarely drank but kept for guests. The house was silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock Jessa had insisted they buy last year. An investment piece, she'd called it. The front door opened. Jessa's voice called out, "Colt? You home?" "In here," he answered, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. She appeared in the doorway, surprise evident on her face. "I thought you'd be at the hospital. Eliza's with Braden. I needed to come home, shower, get some things." He gestured to the glass across from him. "Have a drink with me?" Wariness flashed in her eyes, quickly replaced by a warm smile that once would have melted him. "Of course. Rough day." "You could say that." She settled across from him, crossing her legs elegantly. She'd changed since the hospital designer jeans, silk blouse, makeup refreshed. For whose benefit? Colt wondered. Not his. Not anymore. "Where's Nellie?" he asked. "Sleepover at Madison's." Her mom offered. Thought it would be good for her to have some normalcy. Jessa sipped her bourbon. "How's Braden?" Responsive to stimuli. "They think he'll wake up soon." Colt watched her face carefully. The swelling's gone down enough for them to do more detailed scans. Was that tension in her shoulders? "That's good news." "It is." Colt took a slow sip, then set his glass down. "Jessa, I know. 2 words. Simple. Direct." Her face remained perfectly composed, but her hand tightened around the glass. "Know what?" "Everything." His voice remained calm, controlled. "About Wren. About the money. About Braden." A flicker of something fear? Calculation? Crossed her features before she laughed lightly. "Colt, what are you talking about?" "Who's Wren?" He didn't rise to the bait. "Your fiancé from Bend. The one you never actually broke up with. The one who's been in our house, around our children, who put our son in a coma." "That's ridiculous." But the denial lacked conviction. Her eyes darted to her purse, where Colt knew her second phone was kept. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't make this worse by continuing to lie." For a moment, he thought she might maintain the charade. Then her face changed the warm, concerned mother replaced by something harder, colder. "How did you find out?" No denial. No explanation. Just a practical question about the failure of her deception. In that moment, Colt knew that whatever love he might still have harbored for the woman he thought he'd married had died completely. Braden was smarter than you gave him credit for. Colt reached into his pocket and placed the flash drive on the table between them. "He recorded you. Both of you." The color drained from Jessa's face. "That's not possible. I saw it all, Jessa." "Laramie hitting him. You blocking the door so he couldn't escape. Both of you concocting the false story while our son lay unconscious." Her glass hit the table with a sharp click. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to happen like that." "Then explain it to me." Colt's voice remained level. Even his rage burned beneath the surface. "Explain how you brought a violent man into our home. How you stood by while he hurt our son. How you've been lying to me for our entire marriage. I still loved him." The admission hung in the air between them. "I never stopped, not really. You and I, we work well together, Colt. We build a good life. But with Wren, it's different. It's passion, it's history, it's delusion." Colt leaned forward. "He has a record of assault. A former girlfriend who disappeared. And now he's nearly killed your son. That was an accident." Tears filled Jess's eyes. "He never meant to hurt Braden that badly. He just wanted to scare him. And you? What did you want when you blocked the door? When you helped cover it up?" She looked away. "I panicked. I was trying to protect everyone." "No." Colt's voice was cold now. "You were protecting yourself. And him. Not Braden. Never Braden. What are you going to do? Turn me in? Destroy our family? Think about Nellie, Colt. Think about Braden. They need a mother. They need safety." Colt's voice was steel. "They need honesty. They need a parent who would die for them, not sacrifice them. I made a mistake." Jessa leaned forward, her hand reaching for his. "A terrible mistake. But we can fix this. Together. For the kids." Colt withdrew his hand. "There's no we anymore, Jessa. I've already spoken to the police. They have the videos. They're looking for Laramie now. Her face transformed, the mask of contrition falling away entirely. You had no right. I had every right. As Braden's father. As a human being with a conscience. Colt stood. I'm filing for emergency custody of both children. Given the evidence, I don't think that will be a problem. Jessa rose too, fury replacing her calculated charm. You can't do this to me. To us. There is no us. There never really was. Colt moved toward the door. The police will be here soon to take your statement. I suggest you tell them the truth. It's your only chance at ever seeing your children again. You sanctimonious bastard. Her voice was venom now. You think you're so perfect? The dedicated nurse, the loving father? You were never there, Colt. Always at the hospital, always putting strangers before your own family. You created this situation. Colt paused at the doorway. No, Jessa, you made your choices. Now you'll live with the consequences. Red Grove County Courthouse loomed imposing against the morning sky, its stone facade a reminder of the weight of law and consequence. Colt adjusted his tie, the same one he'd worn to Braden's 5th grade graduation, and checked his watch. 20 minutes until the emergency custody hearing. Stop fidgeting, Eliza said beside him. You look fine. It's not about how I look. In a courtroom, it's always partly about how you look. She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from his suit jacket. Julie is the best family lawyer in 3 counties. She's got this. As if summoned, Julia Ramirez approached, briefcase in hand, her tailored suit and confident stride marking her as someone accustomed to winning. The judge assigned to our case is Michaels. That's good news. She's thorough and has little patience for parents who endanger their children. What about Jess's lawyer? Colt asked. Dennis Cook. Competent, but predictable. He'll try to paint Jessa as a victim of Laramie's manipulation, suggest she was afraid for her own safety. Julia's expression hardened, but the video evidence is damning. She clearly had opportunities to protect Braden and chose not to. Inside the courtroom, Colt saw Jessa for the first time since their confrontation. She sat beside her attorney, dressed conservatively in a navy blue dress, her hair pulled back in a modest ponytail. The image of a concerned mother, wrongfully accused. Their eyes met briefly across the room, hers filled with tears that didn't reach her soul. The proceedings began with opening statements. The prosecution painted a picture of calculated deception spanning years. A woman who had married for convenience and security while maintaining a relationship with a violent ex-fiancé, plotting to steal money and possibly commit murder. The defense countered with an image of Jessa as a victim herself manipulated by Laramie, trapped in his web of threats and coercion, afraid for her children's safety if she didn't comply with his demands. When Colt took the stand, he spoke clearly, controlling the rage and betrayal that threatened to overwhelm his testimony. He described finding the bruises on Braden's back, Nellie's whispered warning, the discovery of the video. And what did this video show, Mr. Warner? Julia asked. It showed Ren Laramie threatening my son. It showed my wife, Jessa, blocking the door when Braden tried to escape. It showed Laramie striking Braden, causing him to fall and hit his head. And it showed both of them deciding to create a false story about a fall down the stairs. And where is your son now? Still in a medically induced coma at Red Grove Regional. The doctors are optimistic about his recovery, but he hasn't fully regained consciousness. By the time final arguments concluded, Judge Michaels' decision came swiftly. Based on the evidence presented, I am granting emergency temporary custody of both minor children, Braden and Nellie Warner, to their father, Colt Warner. Mrs. Warner is to have no unsupervised contact with either child pending the outcome of the criminal investigation and a full custody hearing. Relief flooded through Colt. The first step accomplished, the pediatric ICU was quiet in the pre-dawn hours. Colt sat beside Braden's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of his son's chest. The ventilator had been removed yesterday, a positive sign according to Dr. Quezada. Brain activity continued to increase. It was now just a matter of time. Come on, buddy, Colt murmured, holding Braden's hand. I need you back. A soft knock at the door preceded Dr. Quezada's entrance. The young doctor looked exhausted but offered a small smile. Thought I'd find you here. Don't you ever sleep? Not much, Colt admitted. Any news? The latest EEG shows increased activity in the speech and motor centers. Very encouraging. Quezada checked Braden's vitals, making notes on his tablet. Has there been any movement? Response to stimuli. He squeezed my hand twice last night, and his eyelids fluttered when I was reading to him. The door opened again, and Detective Lunsford entered, dark circles under her eyes, suggesting she'd been working through the night. Mr. Warner. Doctor. Sorry to interrupt. Any developments? Colt asked, immediately alert. We've located Laramie's vehicle abandoned at a bus station in Portland. He purchased a ticket to Seattle, but we don't believe he boarded that bus. It was likely a diversion, so he's still out there. Colt's jaw tightened. Any surveillance from the bus station? Grainy footage shows someone matching his description, but he was wearing a hat and sunglasses. We're continuing to monitor all transportation hubs and have alerts out to neighboring states. Lunsford hesitated. There's something else. Your wife is requesting to see Braden. Absolutely not. Colt's response was immediate. That was my position as well, but her attorney is making noise about parental rights. I wanted to warn you they might try to get a court order. Dr. Quezada frowned. As Braden's attending physician, I can testify that any stressful encounters could be detrimental to his recovery. That should hold him off, at least until he's conscious and stable. Lunsford nodded. Good. Use that. She turned back to Colt. We're also investigating the financial angle. The insurance policy I mentioned? It was increased 6 months ago. Payout of $2 million. Colt felt sick, with Jessa as the beneficiary. Correct. And there's a second policy on Braden. Smaller, but still significant. Added just 3 months ago. The implications were too horrible to fully comprehend. Had Jessa been planning to kill him all along? Had hurting Braden been part of some larger scheme? 3 days later, Colt stood in the empty living room of what had once been his family home. The children were safely away with Eliza. Undercover officers were positioned strategically around the neighborhood. The house had been swept for weapons and wired for sound and video. Colt wore a bulletproof vest beneath his shirt, a precaution Lunsford had insisted on. A nearly invisible earpiece allowed him to hear her occasional updates from the unmarked van parked 2 blocks away. The doorbell rang precisely at 8. Colt took a deep breath, slipping into the role he'd prepared: the conflicted husband, the desperate father, the man willing to consider forgiveness for the sake of his family. Jessa stood on the doorstep, beautiful in a simple blue dress he'd once told her was his favorite. Her expression was perfectly calibrated: remorseful, hopeful, vulnerable. Colt, she said softly, thank you for seeing me. Come in. He stepped aside, noting how she scanned the living room as she entered, checking for recording devices, for other people, for threats. Always calculating. The house feels empty without the children, she remarked, taking a seat on the couch. How are they? Adapting. Braden's therapy is going well. Nellie misses her friends at school. And her mother? A hint of challenge beneath the sorrowful tone. She asks about you. It wasn't entirely a lie. Nellie did ask, mostly variations of, is mommy still bad? And did she help the man hurt Braden on purpose? Jessa sighed, eyes downcast. I've made terrible mistakes, Colt. Unforgivable ones. But I want you to know that I never intended for Braden to be hurt. Then why block the door? Why help create the false story? He kept his tone neutral, curious rather than accusatory. I was afraid. Ren has a side you haven't seen. Violent, controlling. Her voice dropped. He threatened all of us if I didn't go along with his plans. Plans that included stealing from our accounts? Taking out extra insurance on me. She flinched. He found out about the policy through some connections. Pressure me to increase it. Said it was for the children's future. In his ear, Lunsford murmured, movement at the back of the house. Stay focused. Where is he now, Jessa? She shook her head. I don't know. He disappeared after what happened. Cut off contact. The lie was smooth, practiced. In his earpiece, Lunsford murmured, back door's been tampered with. He's inside. Colt maintained his composure, though his senses heightened, aware of every sound in the house. I want to believe you, Jessa. I do. But there's so much damage. We can repair it. Together. She reached for his hand. The children need stability, normalcy. They need us together. The floorboard in the hallway creaked a sound so familiar Colt had known exactly where to step to avoid it when checking on the children at night. Is that what you really want? Colt asked, deliberately raising his voice slightly. For us to be a family again? After everything, it's all I want, Jessa insisted, though her eyes darted briefly toward the hallway. She'd heard it too, knew who was there, even though you're still in contact with a man who nearly killed our son. Jessa's expression froze. I told you, Colt, don't bother denying it. A new voice, harsh and masculine, came from the hallway entrance. He knows, Jessa. Ren Laramie stepped into the living room, taller than Colt had expected, his copper hair cropped short, different from the video. But the ring on his right hand caught the light exactly as Nellie had described. Colt rose slowly, positioning himself between Jessa and Laramie. This is private, Colt said evenly. Between my wife and me. Ex-wife soon enough. Laramie's smile didn't reach his eyes. Unless she's managed to convince you otherwise? She's good at that, aren't you, Jess? Making men believe what you want them to believe. Jessa stood now too, her calculated composure replaced by genuine tension. Ren, you shouldn't be here. We agreed. Plans change. Laramie's gaze never left Colt. I wanted to meet the man who's been raising my son. The statement hit like a physical blow. What did you say? Laramie's smile widened. Oh, she didn't tell you that part? Little Braden? He's mine. Do the math, Warner. 9 months before he was born, Jessa and I were still together. She found out she was pregnant after she'd already sunk her claws into you. It was her idea. He testified, his voice flat, emotionless. All of it. She contacted me about 6 months after the marriage, said she'd made a mistake, said she still loved me, but she needed Warner's stability, his income, his benefits. Now we adapt. Laramie reached behind him, producing a gun. Now we accelerate the timeline. Poor Colt Warner, so distraught over his failed marriage, confronts his cheating wife and her lover before turning the gun on himself. Jessa gasped. Reno, that wasn't what we discussed. Plans change, baby. Laramie's eyes were cold. The money's gone. The escape route's compromised. But we can still walk away from this. 2 grieving parents after a murder-suicide? No one will look too closely. You won't get away with this, Colt said calmly. The house is wired. Cameras, microphones, police outside. You've just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder on multiple recording devices. Uncertainty flickered across Laramie's face, but the gun remained steady. You're bluffing. Am I? Why do you think I invited Jessa here? Why do you think I asked all those specific questions? Understanding dawned in Jessa's eyes. This was a trap, she whispered. You set us up. Yes. Colt kept his focus on Laramie. Police are already moving in. You have maybe 10 seconds to drop the weapon before they breach. The front and back doors burst open simultaneously. Police! Drop the weapon. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Laramie, cornered and desperate, swung the gun toward Colt. Jessa, perhaps calculating that a murder charge would end any chance at a reduced sentence, lunged for Laramie's arm. The gun discharged, the bullet thudding into the wall behind Colt. Officers swarmed in, tackling Laramie to the ground, the gun skittering across the hardwood floor. The coffee in the police station tasted like it had been brewed in a boot, but Colt drank it anyway. For hours of giving statements had left his throat parched and his mind exhausted. In the interview room across the hall, visible through a narrow window, Jessa sat with her attorney, her posture rigid, her expression unreadable. Detective Lunsford entered the waiting area, dark circles under her eyes betraying her own fatigue. That's the last of the paperwork for now. We're holding both of them without bail Laramie on attempted murder, conspiracy, assault on a minor, and a host of other charges. Jessa on conspiracy, child endangerment, obstruction, and accessory after the fact. What happens next? Colt asked. The DA will present to the grand jury next week. With the recorded confession and the video evidence from Braden's room, indictments are virtually guaranteed. Lunsford settled into the chair beside him. You should know Laramie's talking, trying to cut a deal by giving up Jessa as the mastermind. And Jessa, claiming duress, manipulation. Says Laramie threatened her and the children if she didn't go along with his plans. Lunsford's expression made her skepticism clear. Standard playbook, each blaming the other. Do you believe either of them? I believe they're both exactly where they belong. She checked her watch. You should go. Your sister texted they're back at the rental house with the kids. The drive to the rental house felt surreal. The adrenaline of the past few hours was ebbing, leaving Colt hollow with exhaustion. But as he pulled into the driveway, seeing lights glowing in the windows, knowing his children were safe inside, a different emotion swelled, not quite peace. Not yet, but perhaps its precursor. Relief. Eliza met him at the door. They're okay, she said immediately, reading the question in his eyes. Asleep. It's nearly midnight. Before Colt could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. Daddy. Nellie stood there in unicorn pajamas. Her stuffed bunny clutched her chest. Colt opened his arms, and she ran to him, climbing onto his lap. Did you catch the bad man? She asked, her voice muffled against his shirt. Yes, sweetheart. He can't hurt anyone anymore. And Mommy? Is she coming home now? Colt exchanged a glance with Eliza, who nodded encouragingly. No, honey. Mommy did some very wrong things. She has to face consequences for her choices. Like a timeout. Despite everything, Colt smiled the child's frame of reference. Something like that. A very long timeout. 6 weeks after the arrests, life had settled into a new routine. The rental house, initially temporary, now felt like home. Nellie had personalized her room with artwork and stuffed animals. Braden, making remarkable progress in physical therapy, had returned to school part-time. Colt had arranged his work schedule at a different hospital to avoid the gossip at Red Grove Regional, taking day shifts only to be home every night with his children. But on a crisp autumn morning, Colt sat at Braden's bedside, helping him with stretching exercises for his right arm, still weaker than his left. Push against my hand, Colt instructed. Good. That's stronger than yesterday. Braden's face scrunched with effort. Dr. Quezada says I might be able to try baseball again in the spring. One step at a time, buddy. But that sounds like a goal worth working toward. A knock at the door interrupted them. Nellie poked her head in. Daddy? Aunt Eliza's here with Detective Lunsford. In the living room, Lunsford stood examining the family photos Colt had placed on the mantel, new ones, taken since the move. No images of Jessa allowed in this fresh start. Mr. Warner, she said, turning as he entered. Sorry to drop by unannounced. Is everything okay? Has something happened with the case? Actually, yes. For once, the detective's perpetual frown had softened. Laramie's accepted the plea deal. Full confession, comprehensive testimony against Jessa. That's good news. Very good. But there's more. Lunsford glanced at Braden, who had followed Colt into the room. Is there somewhere we can speak privately? Whatever it is, you can say it in front of Braden. Colt rested a hand on his son's shoulder. We don't keep secrets in this family anymore. Lunsford nodded, respecting the decision. As part of his confession, Laramie provided information about additional offshore accounts Jessa had established. Substantial funds, over $300,000 hidden in the Caymans. Colt's eyebrows rose. That's more than I knew about. There's also this. Lunsford handed him a folder. DNA results. Laramie requested testing to prove his paternity claim regarding Braden. He thought it might earn him some leniency. Colt's hand tightened on Braden's shoulder as he opened the folder. Beside him, the boy stood rigid, barely breathing. Colt scanned the document, medical training helping him decipher the technical language. Then he looked up, meeting Braden's anxious gaze. Negative, he said simply. He's not your biological father, Braden. The boy's knees seemed to buckle slightly. He's not. No, he lied, probably to hurt us both. Colt knelt to Braden's eye level. But like I told you before, it wouldn't have changed anything for me either way. Tears of relief flooded Braden's eyes. So I'm really yours? Always have been. Always will be. Colt pulled him into a fierce hug, looking over his shoulder at Lunsford. Thank you. The county courthouse buzzed with activity on the first day of Jessa's trial. Media vans lined the street outside. Curious onlookers filled the gallery, drawn by the sensational case that had captured attention across the state. Colt sat in the front row beside Eliza, his posture military straight, his expression carefully neutral. Across the aisle, Jessa's parents flown in from Arizona after learning of their daughter's arrest huddled together, looking shell-shocked and aged beyond their years. Jessa entered with her defense team, no longer the polished, confident woman who had dominated their home. Prison jumpsuit, hair pulled back severely, makeup minimal, but still calculating, still observant, her eyes scanning the courtroom until they found Colt. He met her gaze without flinching, without hatred, without any emotion at all. Just assessment, measurement, judgment. She looked away first. The proceedings began with opening statements. The prosecution painted a picture of calculated deception spanning years. A woman who had married for convenience and security while maintaining a relationship with a violent ex-fiancé, plotting to steal money and possibly commit murder. The defense countered with an image of Jessa as a victim herself manipulated by Laramie, trapped in his web of threats and coercion, afraid for her children's safety if she didn't comply with his demand. On the trial's fourth day, Braden took the stand. Colt watched with a mixture of pride and heartache as his son swore to tell the truth, his voice steady despite his obvious tension. The prosecutor approached gently, asking simple questions about that day, about what he had seen and heard. "I knew something was wrong for a while," Braden testified. "Mom was acting different, secretive. I heard her on the phone sometimes, talking to someone she called our. Then I saw him in our house one day when Dad was at work." "What did you do then?" "I got scared. I thought maybe Mom was just having an affair. That's what they call it on TV when someone cheats." A flash of 12-year-old precociousness despite the seriousness. "But then I heard them talking about money, about Dad's insurance, about leaving. So you set up the camera?" Braden nodded. "I bought it with my allowance. Hid it in my Lego set. I thought if I had proof, I could show Dad and he'd know what to do." "And what happened the day you were injured?" Braden's composure wavered slightly. "I came home early from baseball practice. Coach had an emergency. Mom didn't know I was there. I heard voices in the kitchen. Her and him." He took a deep breath. "They were arguing about money, about timing, about how to get Dad out of the picture." "Out of the picture?" the prosecutor prompted. "That's what Mom said. We need to get Colt out of the picture sooner rather than later." I knew what that meant. On the sixth day of trial, Jessa took the stand in her own defense. She had been coached well, her appearance softened, her manner contrite yet dignified. She spoke of falling under Laramie's influence years ago, of his reappearance in her life as a threat rather than a welcome presence. "I made terrible mistakes," she acknowledged, tears welling. "I betrayed my husband's trust. I failed to protect my son. I will live with that guilt for the rest of my life." But when pressed on specific inconsistencies, the offshore accounts in her name only, text messages that contradicted her claims of coercion, her actions the day Braden was injured, her carefully constructed narrative began to fray. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning their verdict. Guilty on all counts. The judge's final words to Jessa were damning. "Mrs. Warner, this court has rarely seen such calculated betrayal of the most sacred trust, those between wife and husband, mother and child. Your actions and inactions reveal a character so fundamentally selfish, so morally compromised, that I can only describe your behavior as inhuman." The sentence came down, 18 years, with possibility of parole after 12. Not as severe as Laramie's 25, but more than sufficient to ensure the children would be grown before she could seek release. 6 months after the trial, Colt stood on the front porch of a modest cabin on 5 acres outside Bend, Oregon, watching as Nellie chased butterflies in the wildflower meadow that comprised their front yard. Behind him, Braden and Eliza argued good-naturedly about the proper way to assemble the new patio furniture they'd purchased for the deck. "The screws go through the bottom first," Eliza insisted. "No way. Look at the diagram." Braden tapped the instruction sheet. "Side panels first, then connect to the base." Colt smiled, sipping his coffee as the spring breeze carried their voices. In the months since relocating to Bend, 2 hours east of Red Grove, life had gradually recalibrated. The children had enrolled in new schools, made new friends. Colt had taken a position at the regional medical center, working regular daytime hours that allowed him to be home for dinner every night. The divorce had been finalized, Jess's parental rights terminated. The criminal restitution, combined with the sale of their Red Grove house and the recovered offshore funds, had provided enough to purchase this property outright, a quiet sanctuary far from media attention and painful memories. Eliza had indeed transferred to her firm's Bend office, purchasing a small house 10 minutes away. Close enough to help with the children, but respectful of their need to establish themselves as a reconfigured family unit. 1 year after the arrests, Colt sat at the kitchen table reviewing architectural plans spread across the surface. The cabin, while comfortable, had always been meant as transitional housing. The land around it offered plenty of space for something more permanent, more intentionally designed for their new life. The doorbell rang, an unusual occurrence given their remote location. Colt opened the door to find Devin Morgan, the private investigator, standing on his porch holding a thick manila envelope. "Morgan, didn't expect to see you again." Colt stepped back, inviting him in. "Coffee? No thanks. Just passing through on my way to a job in Boise." Morgan stepped inside, glancing around approvingly at the cabin's interior. "You've made a nice home here." "Getting there." Colt gestured to the plans on the table. "Breaking ground on the permanent house next month." Morgan nodded, then handed over the envelope. "This is why I stopped by. Found something during a different case that might interest you. Thought it deserved a personal delivery." Curious, Colt opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of documents, bank statements, property records, legal filings, all bearing Jess's name or aliases Colt had never heard before. "What am I looking at?" Evidence of another account, one the prosecutors missed. In Singapore. Morgan's expression was grim satisfaction. "Opened 8 years ago, shortly after your marriage. Initial deposit came from a sale of property in Bend that you never knew she owned." Colt flipped through the statements, his medical training allowing him to process information methodically despite his surprise. Over $200,000. With interest and investments, now close to $300,000. The legal documents in there should help you claim it as part of the ongoing restitution. "How did you find this?" Morgan's mouth quirked. "Working another case. Wife suspected husband of hiding assets. Husband had a connection to Laramie from their Texas days." One thread led to another. Colt sat heavily at the table, staring at the evidence of yet another betrayal. Even after everything that had happened, Jess's capacity for deception still had the power to stun him. "Thank you," he said finally. "I know you didn't have to bring this to me." Morgan shrugged. "Professional pride. I don't like loose ends." He glanced at the architectural plans. "Besides, looks like you could use it for that new house." After Morgan left, Colt spread the documents beside the house plans, his mind racing with possibilities. The additional funds would allow for features they deemed luxuries before a dedicated therapy room for Braden's exercises, the art studio Nellie had wistfully described, perhaps even the wraparound porch Eliza insisted was essential for proper morning coffee. Construction began in late summer. Colt involved both children in the process, letting them help choose elements of their new rooms, watching as Braden took particular interest in the structural aspects while Nellie focused on colors and textures. By the following spring, as Braden's baseball team prepared for regional championships and Nellie's artwork earned a place in a local youth exhibition, the new house was complete, a spacious craftsman-style home nestled among ponderosa pines, its large windows capturing mountain views, its open floor plan designed for family gatherings and shared memories. The day they moved in, exactly 18 months after Braden's injury, felt like a ceremony of sorts. A transition not just of place, but of identity. From victims to survivors. From broken to rebuilt. 2 years after Braden's injury. On a perfect Oregon summer evening, Colt walked into the backyard of their craftsman home carrying a tray of lemonade. The scene before him was one he never tired of witnessing. Braden, 14 now and nearly as tall as Colt, playing catch with Dr. Quezada, who had become a regular visitor and unofficial uncle figure. Nellie sat under the sprawling oak tree Colt had insisted on preserving during construction, her nose buried in a book while she absently stroked the family's newest addition, a rescue dog named Scout. Eliza emerged from the house behind him, carrying a plate of cookies. "Braden's form is looking good," she observed. "That new pitching coach is earning his keep." Malcolm's been working with him, too. Colt set the lemonade on the patio table. Says his recovery is a medical marvel. Not just medical, Eliza countered. That boy's got your determination. Both these kids do. It was true. Braden had pushed through physical therapy with grim persistence, refusing to accept limitations. Nellie had developed a quiet strength that belied her 9 years, a watchful resilience that reminded Colt of Eliza at her age. Mail came, Eliza added, pulling an envelope from her pocket. From the Department of Corrections. Colt took it, recognizing the official seal. Inside was a standard notification. Jessa had been moved to a minimum security facility as part of her sentence progression. She had also filed for visitation rights with the children, despite the termination of her parental rights. She doesn't give up, Eliza said, reading over his shoulder. No, but neither do we. Colt folded the letter and tucked it away. There would be another legal battle, another hearing. He would fight it as he had fought everything else methodically, relentlessly, for his children's well-being. Later, after their guests had departed and the children had gone to bed, Colt stood alone on the back porch, gazing at the stars emerging above the ponderosa pines. From inside came the soft sounds of a house at rest, Nellie's music box playing quietly, Scout's nails clicking on hardwood as he settled for the night, the dishwasher humming its cycle. The porch door opened behind him. Braden stepped out, wrapped in a hoodie against the night's chill. Can't sleep? Colt asked. Had the dream again. Braden leaned against the railing beside him. Not as bad this time. More like a memory that's fading. That's progress. They stood in comfortable silence, father and son, watching the moonlight on distant mountains. I got a letter today, Braden said finally. From her. Colt felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. You don't have to read anything she sends. I know. I did anyway. Braden's profile was solemn in the dim light. She says she's changed, that she's sorry, that she wants to see us, me and Nellie. And what do you think about that? Braden considered the question with the careful deliberation that had survived his injury. I think forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, or trusting again. He turned to face Colt. I don't want to see her. Neither does Nellie. We talked about it. Relief mingled with pride in Colt's chest, relief that his children remained united in their boundaries, pride that they felt secure enough to express them. Then you won't, he said simply. Not now, not ever, unless you change your minds. I'll make sure of it. Braden nodded, tension visibly leaving his shoulders. I knew you would. He hesitated, then added, Dad, are you ever going to forgive her? The question hung in the night air between them, honest and searching. No, Colt answered, equally honest. Some betrayals go too deep. Some choices reveal too much about a person's character. He placed a hand on Braden's shoulder. But that's my journey, not yours. You and Nellie will find your own paths through this in your own time. I'll support whatever you decide. Braden absorbed this, then smiled slightly. You know what Nellie said today? She said our family isn't who shares our name, it's who protects our soul. The words, so similar to thoughts Colt had been turning over in his own mind, struck him with unexpected force. From the mouth of his 9-year-old daughter, a wisdom that distilled everything he had learned these past 2 years into a single, perfect truth. Smart kid, he managed through the sudden tightness in his throat. After Braden returned inside, Colt remained on the porch, the quiet of the night settling around him. In the distance, an owl called, its haunting note echoing across the property. Scout barked once in response, then fell silent. Forgiveness wasn't owed. Trust wasn't given. Family wasn't who shared your name. These were the truths Colt Warner had paid dearly to learn, the principles that now guided his every action. Some might call him unforgiving, even ruthless in his protection of what remained. He could live with those judgments. What he wouldn't live with was failing his children again as he turned to go inside, to check locks and alarms as he did every night, to look in on Nellie and Braden as they slept. Colt carried with him not regret for what was lost, but fierce determination to preserve what had been saved. Some called it unforgiving. He called it love in its purest, most protective form.